Welcome to Building While Flying, a Sasha Group podcast where we interview business leaders about how they tackle challenges, stay resilient, and navigate ever-changing skies.
We are back on the Building While Flying podcast. On this week's episode, Katie speaks with Molly Fienning, co-founder and CEO of Red Clay, a modern Southern hot sauce and hot honey brand named Tabasco for the 21st Century by Food & Wine magazine. Prior to Red Clay, Molly co-founded and served as co-CEO of Babiators, one of Forbes' 100 most promising companies and the leading sunglasses brand for babies and kids. Molly graduated from Harvard University with a BA in electrical engineering and computer science. Katie, great conversation with Molly. I heard you
Molly's
guys
a badass.
Seriously, to say the least.
Can we also talk about the fact that she may also be a spy still?
Right.
As well as a serial successful CEO.
Right. Or maybe we shouldn't talk about it.
You're right. Okay, edit that bit out. I don't want to blow her cover.
Anywho, I heard you guys get excited about when you started to talk about the alchemy of careers and people. Why don't you talk a little bit about what that conversation led to and how it made you feel?
I absolutely love that we hit upon that. Just really early on, the stories of Molly and her childhood and the kind of whoever it was that had mentioned it to her that she had sort of alchemically manifested her career. Mm-hmm. And I just think what's super satisfying to me from just a brand and brand building perspective is you can feel that kind of founding energy right the way through, from how she built her own career, kind of concocted combinations of career that you would never have thought of, having kind of found herself as a military wife and not going down the path she'd originally planned. And then two companies so wildly different, but still very super focused around a central product that she's built and kind of really created something highly successful and highly functioning out of. So yeah, there's the alchemy of her own career building, and then now the kind of mirror of the alchemy of this amazing hot sauce that we can enjoy on oysters when we go visit her in North Carolina.
Yes, I truly hope so. Molly is certainly a wizard in the world of hot sauce, to say the least. Let's not keep our listeners waiting any longer.
I love it.
Let's dive into Katie's conversation.
Let's dive in. Welcome to Building While Flying. My guest today is Molly Fienning, a CEO of Red Clay, a cold-pressed and fermented hot sauce company. But she has a whole load of stories that live behind that, which brought her to the conversation we're having today. Not least, starting out in the world of international security and a previous CEO-ship prior to that. But before I jump into that story, first of all, welcome to the show, Molly.
Thank you, Katie. So happy to be here.
So really excited to just dive in today and hear a little bit about your story and your journey. I know that today you are CEO of Red Clay, and we'll talk a bit about that. But can you talk a little bit about the journey that brought you here? Because it's definitely an interesting one.
Thank you. It is a journey for sure. Lots of turns and winding road. So in summary, my childhood dream was to be either a spy or a wizard. And I got to a certain age and realized I didn't have magical powers. And so I wanted to join the international intelligence community. I also love building things. I always have loved building things more than I've loved writing papers as a kid. And so in college, I studied electrical engineering, computer science. And then ended up at IBM, then back at Harvard for studying kind of the role that the internet plays in international security, which led me to DC for a job to sort of work in the community there. And that's my first weekend in DC. I re-met a boy named Ted, who ended up as my husband. But we talked all night at this party in Georgetown, and as opposed to actually, waiting on my security clearance and joining and doing sort of something in the world of Intel, I ended up a military fiance in rural Mississippi.
Amazing. What an unexpected turn.
Love and the opportunity for a great love was this pivot moment there, juncture on the road. And knowing at that point we would move every 6 to 18 months with the Marine Corps, he was a fighter pilot for the Marine Corps, that I knew I had to work on my own. And so I started in commercial real estate because I grew up with my dad in commercial real estate banking. I knew the world, but that was nice money, but not my heart, not like what I really was passionate about. And I ended up sort of in this world of entrepreneurship, which is truly my heart and what I do very well through, the world of the Marine Corps. We first started Babiators, which was my first product-based business 11 years ago. We've grown that, my partners and I, my husband and another couple from college, to about $8.5 million in revenue organically. We still own it. The team runs it. It's a wonderful business that retails in about 45 countries. But about in 2014, after we had our second son, we moved to Charleston, and I was eating at our favorite oyster bar here and tried a hot sauce that basically, as somebody who didn't like hot sauce, it blew me away. And I ended up investing in it silently 2 weeks later and stepping in as CEO of Red Clay 4 years later in 2018.
Wow. I don't think anyone could have charted that path. I also really enjoy the fact that you began with I wanted to be a spy or a wizard. Because there is something you've kind of...
This is like Harry Potter too. This is crazy. This is not normal.
Well,
thank you.
FYI, this is going to totally out me as the total geek that I am, but I also had wizarding desires pre-Harry Potter when I was a small child.
I knew I liked you.
I was known to be that kid who found a staff and walked around and on long walks in the woods with the family. So you're speaking.
I would play in the backyard at my parents' house, and their beach house, and I would sit with a bowl and mash up dirt and my dad's hotel shampoos and stones and leaves into a bowl. And they were like, "What are you doing?"
I'm making a potion, of course.
Making a potion.
So I'm going to I work on the brand strategy side of things, and we're constantly talking about the kind of driving force that sits behind a founder, the founding instinct that drives some of these things. And it's interesting to me that wizarding, the spy, the kind of knowledge and mastery thing seems a lot of of what drives you as a founder.
That's a great point. And even the wizarding thing, I was connected to a friend, just somebody who was a real intuitive person. And she said, "I see you somewhere in a backyard, doing something at 8 years old." And I was brought back to what I just shared with you, that moment, mixing the potion in a bowl, like a mortal and pestle, just my backyard leaves and dirt. And she said, that is the archetype of the alchemist. And the alchemist is somebody who makes things, who mixes things, who builds things. And I think about, she's like, "You're doing that now with hot sauce." I was like, holy moly, yes.
I think that's the kind of direction I was thinking too. It's not only on the hot sauce side, but it's actually the alchemy of what you've done with your career. You've kind of taken some things that have been thrown at you, going from aspirations to go into international security to being the military fiance and setting up Babiators. You're kind of taking new inputs and through the philosopher's stone of alchemy, turning it into an exciting opportunity for business and career.
And I never would have thought that about myself unless you or she, somebody actually is pointing that out. And then it resonates. It feels very true. And somebody asked me about goal setting, and I'm like, I don't necessarily think about long-term goals. I think about more journeys I want to go on and experiences I want to have and how I want to evolve, and change I want to make. And that I think is the crux of alchemy.
That's so interesting. And I'd love actually to push a little bit into that. So if we look at those two arcs of creating Babiators and turning it into a comfortable, self-managing $8.5 million brand, and then on to something where you started as a silent partner, but now are obviously very instrumental in driving Red Clay, the hot sauce company. Mm-hmm. What was the journey that you would kind of describe for each of those, and what did you carry with you from one into the other in terms of learning?
I mean, oh my gosh, so much. I mean, I cut my teeth with Babiators for sure. I mean, that was really where I learned about business building, and I went from just and this is the thing I want everyone to know. Whenever somebody starts a business, nobody knows anything, right? Like, and I think people are
We're all
scared.
making it up as we go along.
Exactly. People are scared to think, oh, I don't know what they know. Nobody knows anything. And I think there needs to be a sort of comfort level with, all right, I'm not going to know, but I'll figure it out and I'll do a really good job. And I have found 11 years in, success in entrepreneurship is about perseverance and a commitment to just doing work daily, weekly, monthly, get up, put out a fire, get up. What's the next baby step I have to take? And you know, I think about, so my background in education, I was an engineer, electrical engineer, computer science. At Harvard, they did not teach us specific coding language per se. Yes, we worked in C++ and Java and all of that time, but the focus was not on the language because they knew that would be outmoded very quickly. The focus was the pseudocode, the mindset, the problem-solving algorithms that they wanted us to, like, you know, internalize. And I think about like a big pyramid, and we all go to admire the pyramids or visit the pyramids and say, how could they have done that? But in reality, it's stone by stone, right? Step by step. And so taking this big thing that seems so majestic, unattainable, I could never do that, breaking it down into bites that you can do every day. 10, 15 years later, you turn around, you built a pyramid, and you're like, I don't know how I did that. But it's just, it's about the commitment to doing the work.
I think that is like a lesson for everyone as you think about, especially the kind of the way that quite often building a business and scaling it can feel like boiling the ocean, that if you're not in a position to break it down. Talk about, I'd love to hear a bit about what, because I think a lot of people who have started up a business will often look back at it and think, if only I'd known X when I was making that decision, I'd do it differently. And you've been through two relatively fast cycles in terms of creating a Babiators and sending it off and running, and now jumping in with Red Clay. Mm-hmm. Is there something that you learned from the Babiators experience that you were like, I'm never going to do it that way, and I'm now going to do it this way, and you were able to implement it on the Red Clay side of things as a CEO?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Babiators taught us so much. So I started with my husband and another couple, two friends from college. And then it was just the four of us, very much the entrepreneurship moment, right? And that's where I learned how to be an entrepreneur. And I think in contrast, what Red Clay has taught me is to learn how to be, or learning, I have not learned it yet. It is a day-to-day process, but learning how to be an effective CEO. And so when I look at my time at Red Clay, it is the experience of being a CEO. And I look at time at Babiators, it is those early days of what entrepreneurship really is. And you have an idea, you have a brand name, now what? Okay, you have to incorporate. Okay, you have to have an operating agreement with your partners. You have to trademark. You have to pilot, you know, your benchmark your product. You have to go to market with it, and all those things. Just, you know, the taking something in bringing it into reality. And then with Red Clay, I already knew how to do that. And what I did not know to do was to be an effective leader by myself, because I had this team of 4 people, all like kind of co-CEOs. And so with Red Clay, I've stepped into the power of less about what it means to be an entrepreneur, what it means to be a leader and a CEO of a team. And that is about hiring amazing people and empowering them and getting out of their way. And I think as an entrepreneur, we love to be in the weeds. We love to know everything, get involved in everything. As a CEO, in order to be effective, you have to step out and step back. And that has been a growing experience for me, to get out of the weeds and into just like trusting my team to do it. And I'm here, I got you, and I'll do whatever I can to create an environment that enables you to thrive.
Has there been, I mean, you obviously have kind of, you know, been building a brand at a pretty crazy time in terms of like through the pandemic, although condiments is probably something that has survived pretty well as we've all sat at home desperate for something to spice up our lives.
Exactly.
Can you talk a bit about some of those challenges that you've had where well, obviously in this case you're able to trust your team to figure it out. But what are some of those specific real challenges you've hit in the last 6 years as you've grown it?
We had a real pivot moment at the start of the pandemic, for sure. Our goal was, so when I stepped into CEO, my partner, Chef Jeff, had kind of built this beautiful cult hot sauce locally in Charleston. It was on all the right restaurant tables. Everybody locally loved it. Nobody really knew about it beyond Charleston, unless you visited and stopped at one of the restaurants. And it was plateauing at about $75,000 in revenue. And this was 4 years into us investing, and we were silent money, my husband and I. And I read about Sir Kensington ketchup and how it scaled on 17 million in revenue to 140 million exit with Unilever, and thought everything Sir Kensington is in ketchup. Thoughtfully crafted, young, cool millennial consumer, beautiful branding, higher quality ingredients like we are to hot sauce. And so that drove me to step in. And a big part of our strategy for growth was food service, restaurants, hospitality. We were talking to Barclays Brooklyn Nets about putting hot sauce in the club, boxes, and all these cool restaurant moments when quickly, with our $1 million revenue goal for 2021, all these restaurants in March shut down and stopped ordering everything. And we had to pivot to be able to meet those goals. And a small business lives and dies by its cash, right? So to be able to make sure we had the cash runway to survive what we thought could be a very questionable time. We took all those dollars that we were going to do for sampling, and we pivoted to influencer gifting. And we started giving these samples to chefs and leaders who were now home on Instagram, cooking at home. And so one example of that was Jenna Bush Hager. We did a big Mother's Day gifting, and we gifted to Jenna Bush Hager. And she, 3 or 4 days after receiving, held it up in front of Hoda on the Today Show from home on Zoom. They were still remote.
Yeah.
And this is getting me through quarantine. And we had a $45,000 weekend. And this woman who supported our teeny tiny small brand, basically we went from, oh my God, are we going to make it, to, oh my God, we don't have stock to
suddenly there's another fire to fight.
So, shout out to Jenna for just changing our course in that moment where I wasn't sleeping at night for sure.
Right.
And so that was an example where pandemic habits change, where your point about everyone is now home and not spending their money on outside food and bev, they might treat themselves. People were ordering beautiful, premium, higher quality products, investing in, a gorgeous olive oil or beautiful cured tuna or something, because it's I'm home, I'm cooking for myself.
I'm the gourmet opportunity of the week now. Yeah.
We leaned into that, and that really worked, and we were able to meet our goals for the year, which was great.
It's so true. I mean, I found myself looking in the same store that I had only just begun to feel comfortable even wandering around masked up in those early months, desperately looking for something to be the fun thing to put on the dinner table.
Totally. Yeah. And then the other thing is mixology. We launched a spicy margarita salt, which within weeks became our bestseller on our website, because everyone was making those cocktail hour moments at home and wanted to feel special. And if you're investing in a beautiful small batch top shelf liquor, then why not buy the beautiful top shelf agave to go with it, or fresh lime juice, or in our case, the spicy drink rim that has kosher salt and sorbitol sugar. And so that was a huge moment for us, which was unexpected as well.
So it sounds like, firstly, you're testing things out, but you've got a few of those irons in the fire at any one time, and you don't quite know which of those are going to hit. It's that small bets approach. And then it also sounds like you're doing a decent amount of product innovation, on an ongoing basis around the core spicy sauce.
Yeah, and I found that out through Babiators, in the sense that our classic black aviator shade is going to sell all day long every year. But press and the moments where people want to talk about it, it's always about something new and fresh. Mm-hmm. And so we would come out with these very fashion-y moments, like a neon or a pattern or a new shape style that might be too edgy, obscure for the mainstream, but it's what gets us in the cultural zeitgeist. And so we always believe at Red Clay to have a couple fun things in the pipeline, but we will lead with our hero SKUs, our original hot sauce, our spicy peach honey, our, margarita salt. Those are the things that we'll go to grocery with, and we'll scale en masse with the things we know work. And we use our website as this test bed of small batch before we roll something out beyond kind of direct to consumer.
That's super smart. Talk a bit more. You mentioned, press is the thing that wants new and exciting. And we're in this space now where earned media has taken such a different shape. And you talked a little bit earlier about influencer. What is the makeup of your, and now I'm getting tactical right in there. What is the makeup of how you go about activating that kind of earned media? What is the mix of like the more classic, the press side versus influencer, and what else?
Sure. I think so. I remember when we first launched Babiators, one of my husband's college roommates was the guy who founded Warby Parker. His name was Dave Gilboa, and he maybe launched Warby 2 years before us. And we had dinner with him and his now wife, and we were like, you're disrupting the optical industry and we're making baby shades, but what can you share that will help us? What you've learned on your journey? And he said, make sure you allot some, if not most of your marketing budget to a really wonderful PR strategist team to help build that earned media, because, and this was now 11 years ago, climate's changed slightly for sure, but from day one, we have always had PR. And with Red Clay, when I stepped in CEO, one of the first things I did was bring in a PR team. And I think you need the long leads, you need the traditional press for the flags, for the stamps, for the check in the box. You want to get it, even if it doesn't translate to immediate direct sales and you can't quantify a return on spend. It is so important from a brand cachet and just like a level of respect. And I really believe in traditional PR still. I also think with that, you need to do both a digital ad strategy. And so that could be everything. We're doing things like testing Instagram and Facebook ads, which obviously is less efficient now that there's the privacy. Right. But we do Google ads, and we're now actually just launched with a shopper marketer digital grocery ads. So things like Instacart and Whole Foods is beta testing a version of Instacart through Amazon. Yep. That's going to be like a Whole Foods specific ad spend, or Criteo on Target, or every grocery channel has its partner has its own kind of preferred platform. So we want to put some dollars behind that for sure. And then I think what we're finding works most effectively is the influencer strategy.
Right. Huge.
And so partnering thoughtfully with people who we always make sure the people are already fans and already authentic users. And then we were happy to brainstorm how we can partner on a gifting moment or a recipe or a video where they're talking about what they love about Red Clay. And so I view PR or just brand awareness as old school traditional PR, digital ad spend, and then the influencer events network.
Activations, those moments in time. And then also being able to capitalize on those unexpected moments like the Today Show where something happens and you can jump in and either make hay or figure out how to replicate that again.
Totally. And that came from a big influencer gifting, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where the traditional PR and influencer gifting kind of overlapped, where we gifted to 50 people and maybe 25 are bloggers and 5 are chefs and another 10 are editors or press. And so they sort of all get, the world of voice and audience just gets a little blurred, and it's more about, for me, what are their values? Do they align with what you stand for?
So where are you thinking the opportunity lies most for Red Clay now? What's on offering in the offing in the next few months or year ahead?
So big picture, like in terms of, we talked about the alchemy. Like I have a dream. I want to turn this into something that I can put on a platter and sell. And that's just the idea of like taking something from nothing and exiting it. Because I've built a number of businesses, but we still own them. So I've never put something and given it away,
right?
Shared and sold. So this is something we're overtly building and seeking capital, and we have a wonderful investor set and trying to actually experience genuinely what that's like. I want to just have that experience.
See the full cycle, like the Sir Kensington case study is essentially what I
Exactly.
think about.
So that's, for me, when I think about our long-term strategy, we've got 3 to 4 years of hard work until we can do that. But we really, the whole team is aligned, and we've given everyone on the team equity because we want people to be along for the journey to enjoy the benefit that we all have together and celebrate together. But in terms of immediate short-term fun change, in May, I am very excited about a product we are testing on our website that is a spicy cocktail sauce.
Hell
And
yeah.
what I like about it is no one owns the brand on cocktail sauce. It's
right.
When you're buying it at the store, it's typically generic. It's typically whatever the grocery store has made, like in Whole Foods 365 kind of example. Or you're making it yourself. You're buying ketchup and horseradish.
Right.
And for us, being here in Charleston, South Carolina, created for an oyster hot sauce.
I know. I'm such an oyster fan.
We need to get you down here. They're the best oysters down here. And oyster is a big part of both sort of the climate preservation with the oyster beds, protecting us from hurricanes and rising tides, as well as just the culinary history of the oyster. So Charleston is a wonderful location for oysters. And so for us, a spicy cocktail sauce is a natural evolution into product extension. And I am excited to see how that does, making something really tomato forward and premium and fresh, but elevating it beyond just generic grocery brand.
So you literally become the named product on the menu alongside the named oysters.
Because when we launched hot sauce, clearly you have all the big players. Hot sauce is incredibly, it's the fastest growing condiment. It's a $5 billion global category, but there are hundreds of hot sauces, right?
And so many craft players as well. You're kind of like, it's how to break from that craft into the next layer.
And then even a spicy honey, we came in as this second, more elevated version, but Mike's Hot Honey was the true leader and innovator in the space. And so the spicy cocktail sauce is an example where we actually would be the kind of leader here, which is really fun to brainstorm.
Super exciting. And I love that angle that you mentioned about the sustainability of like oyster beds that are, actually part of growing healthier ecosystems in our oceans, and like that, having a brand partnership that kind of really leans into that as well is really interesting as well.
For sure. We do a lot of oyster tours here. We partner with a wonderful local group called Seaborn, and we'll go out onto their beds and we test, we do wine pairings with my friend who has a natural wine shop, and we get the whole full experience of like my partner, the chefs, where he came up with our sauce, plus oysters, plus yummy wine. And so, but he tells this story about, basically Charleston is sort of the American sinking Venice. Like we're a peninsula. We have sunny day flooding. We need to be the beacon of what the nation should do, big picture, as the waters continue to rise. And our mayor's considering all the options. And one of them is the Army Corps of Engineers coming and building a man-made wall. And the problem with that is the moment it's done, it starts deteriorating. And the moment it's done, it requires dollars for maintenance and all of this. In contrast, oysters, if you surround the city with oysters, and I know Manhattan is doing this with the $1 billion oyster project, it only strengthens, it only grows over time. And so it doesn't deteriorate. It doesn't require those follow-on dollars. And so it's one of the things I want to do, and I don't know if we do this formally with Red Clay because I don't want to get too like on the political side. Personally, my dream is to really get involved and help sort of align the administration of the city with like the need to do this effectively and using oysters as a real kind
That's phenomenal. That full circle, like back to kind of foundational building as well. I went back into a childhood memory as you were talking, actually, because on the east coast of England, where I spent a lot of summers as a kid, there are huge parts of the peninsula where there's just, the whole of the ground is just made up of oyster. Like that, there's been a lot of erosion over years, and it's been done for centuries that oysters have been used to kind of shore up bits of the land. I also like the idea that the name of the brand is like, grounded. red
Dirt.
clay, it's about
My
so the
partner
idea.
is a Georgia boy chef whose grandfather was a watermelon farmer and Renaissance man. He was also a journalist. He was all these crazy things. But he's the man who raised my partner. And he grew up outside of Atlanta, or in Atlanta, and then visiting his grandfather outside of Atlanta. And the dirt in Georgia outside of Atlanta is this color of red clay. And so the red clay sauce, our OG sauce, reminded him of his childhood and wanted to pay homage to his grandfather who raised him.
It's lovely. It's also maybe not deliberate, but it does connect to a really nice story, as we were talking about this kind of the alchemy and making something from something else. And clay is a substance that you can create so much from. I think there's a really nice
I love
connectivity
that.
in there.
I've never thought about that alignment and connection. That's so true.
So yeah, that's a sort of magical little bit of storytelling that's coming through here. My final question, I have so many, and we only have such a short window, but I wanted to just ask you our classic building while flying question, which is, we've heard a lot about, your journey and having come through all the multiple journeys that have all really kind of built up to where you are today. And our podcast is called Building While Flying because of the fact that, entrepreneurs are constantly on this journey of invention whilst actually selling product. So a big part of building while flying is kind of having your pilot's checklist that helps you stay the course and stay centered and grounded as you're dealing with all these things flying at you. And what would be your building while flying mantra or checklist as you think about yourself as a business leader, and that's carried you through all of these moments?
That's such a good question. And my husband is a pilot for the Marine.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, you can just take his.
I had to train him. We had to quiz him on the checklist, the emergency procedure checklist, when we were early days in our dating life. So I know what that is. So I feel like, I certainly believe that, first of all, entrepreneurship is all consuming. Mm-hmm. And secondly, it's isolating, right? You're by yourself in the beginning, and it's you have more work than hours in the day, and you need to build procedures, practices, habits that keep you centered and keep you, prevent you from burning out, and keep you aligned and on that right journey towards the goal, or not goal, but towards the direction of what you want to achieve. And so for me, I think about certain habits I've learned. For instance, as an example, start of the day. If I'm not going to be room mom because I'm a working mother, or able to necessarily do school pickup every day, depending on my meeting schedule, the bookends of my day with my children is incredibly important to me. Mm-hmm. And so I think about breakfast with them, getting them off to school in this loving way. And I think about dinner time with them, getting them our bedtime routine, stories, songs, prayers. So I'm very particular with my kids about our bookends and our Sunday brunch tradition, and so that when they look back on moments, there are those traditions that make them smile, and they remember, in fall, we go apple picking to Asheville. What are those things that you're going to remember as a family? Or Disney World, or whatever they are. And then once they're off to school, for me, it's getting a cup of coffee and getting back into bed, or sitting on the porch. Before I look at my phone, before I check my email, I don't want work to set the tone for my day. I want to be thoughtful about, I'm going to set the tone, and then I'll decide what comes next. And so that's journaling, that is meditation, breathing, prayer, walking, whatever you need to do for yourself, whatever things that really help you. I always take 30 to, depending on, some days 90 minutes. I read Jeff Bezos did something like that, where he didn't take a meeting until 10 a.m. and everything prior to that is his own research or due diligence.
Sacred time. Yeah.
So you dictate your schedule, and then evening, a drink with a girlfriend, a dinner date with my husband, a walk by myself on the water. I need something for me that unplugs my work stuff. And we all need to be really deliberate about turning work off at a certain hour. And so I'm all for working as hard as I can, but I also, I know this is a long game. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And I can't, if I stay up to 2 a.m, I'm a wreck the next day. And so for me, it's about viewing, somebody said to me, if you're a CEO, you need to view yourself as an elite athlete. How do athletes train? What do they put in their body? How do they sleep? How do they work out? Like, and so this is a 10, 15-year journey, like, and thinking about what I want to accomplish in that frame of mind is helpful.
I love that. I've written intentionally designing the week, which I think is just such an important thing. Maintaining priorities, creating rituals that make memories, preserve what's important, and nourish yourself. I think, so valuable. All of those things.
And nourishing for me, like I'm a foodie, so I love savoring beautiful, rich, wonderful things. Like for me, it's not a overt health thing. I need to work out more, but walking is my thing, or stretching. But like even savoring a glass of wine, it's more about the presence of mind. You know what I mean? Than it is, I feel a lot of people get really deep into the health thing. And for me, it's more about like the pleasures of life. I don't want to look back after a decade of work and be like, I worked that decade.
I read somewhere recently, or perhaps it was on a podcast, that talked about savoring as being an incredibly powerful way to be mindful and to not miss the important things. I think the word savoring, and especially in your foodie land,
I love the word savoring, and my 10-year-old uses that word. Like I'm, one of my I have two sons who are 10 and 6. The 6-year-old flies through an ice cream cone, and then the 10-year-old licks it slowly, and he's like, I'm savoring.
And then the other siblings are like, damn it, mine's gone.
Yes, like, I should have done that. But it reminds me of this, like, it's not about what you're consuming. It's about the process and the enjoyment and the memory, and so that's all the difference. Like, are you eating chocolate in shame in your closet because you're embarrassed about it? Or are you sitting and having a beautiful piece and letting it melt in your mouth and really like being present? And then there's like those are two completely different experiences.
Or are you sitting on a dock with a beautiful Charleston view with hot sauce slathered on an oyster with friends?
Well, come on in, whenever you want.
I know, I'm there. It's happening.
Invitation's always open.
Well, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I so appreciate your time. It's been great to hear about your own alchemical journey from Harvard to Babiators to red clay hot sauce. And really, thank you for sharing your kind of lessons along the way. I think super helpful for other business leaders
so much.
too.
And I have always had these thoughts of those sort of more spiritual moments in my head, and I've never been able to align it to the business. So, Katie, thank you for doing that, because you brought these two together in a really powerful way.
Oh, that's been wonderful. It's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you.